With the video game industry expanding so much in recent decades, this generation has seen major evolution in technology, and we've specifically seen a rise in the industry of violent games. The Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB for short, is in charge of assigning age and content ratings to each and every video game on the consumer market. They are a self-regulatory American organization. But even with these rating systems in place, the psychological effects of these games have come into scrutiny as the popularity of violent video games has recently increased. Even with certain statistics matching up, the argument that gun violence could be correlated to those who play more violent video games is very far from being scientifically proven. In this graph, you can see the correlation between gun-related murders and video game consumption in various countries. Now, this is how the trend line should look if the countries showed any sort of correlation. But, instead, the trend line sits at a low plateau. With stats like these debunking the arguments of many, the fast-paced nature of technological growth we see daily still poses a possible threat. Professor Mike Schmierbach agrees with the unknown nature of the issue. What type of psychological effects do you think that violent video games, specifically first-person shooters, can have on the children playing them?
A lot of the results probably suggest short-term effects, right? Like a kid playing a game might become more angry or irritable, but what we're not as certain about is how that necessarily translates into sort of long-term differences. There's some reason to think that maybe people who become acclimated to this sort of violence get used to it or desensitized to it or even see it as a more acceptable solution. But there's contradictory evidence that suggests that a lot of the effects we're seeing aren't really the violence or the shooter, but are just the exciting nature of the game or the emphasis on competition, things like that.
In many instances, the joy and camaraderie that video games bring to their audiences can overshadow the possible risks in playing them.
It's almost a community of people. It's not even a game at that point. I think the way video games can be is it just kind of brings people together, and it obviously takes a lot of time, but if you enjoy it and you get some social benefit from it, I don't see a problem with that.
Overall, it is important to understand the importance of playing violent video games responsibly. Whether there's a correlation or not, it is always encouraged to exercise caution with mature content. Video games may or may not be as dangerous as we anticipated, so as an alternative, read a book sometime, or just get outside. I'm Ben Doyle, signing off from State College.